Hello, good morning, everyone. Right, Coral has kindly had an early morning start coming up from Plymouth and from Wembury, where she's the DWT Marine Officer, Engagement Officer, where she's been working with a job that she's been doing for 10 years based down in Wembury, having previously worked at the MBA in Plymouth. So Coral's job is as to work coordinating the citizen science projects, including Shoresearch, the Devon Marine Standings Network, and Sea Watch Saturdays. So she's got plenty of work down there. When she's not doing that, her favourite thing is snorkeling, looking for lobsters and spider crabs, dragonet, and humpback whales. Which would be an interesting thing to see on the Wembury while you're snorkeling.
I think that was my favourite. That was my top 5 favourite animals. Well, yeah, thank you to Judith for inviting me up to speak again. And hello to everyone online. Hope you can hear me. If you could just put a thumbs up if you can hear it, brilliant. Thanks, Annette. Nice to see you. So it feels like my second home, North Devon now. This is the 3rd time I've been up here in the last few weeks. I've seen some of you only a few days ago. So I've been up here, 3 times doing various things. So I'm just piling it all into 1 month of October, which is great, which is when things calm down a little bit at Wembury. We have a very busy summer season. And then the sort of autumn, winter time, springtime, I get to do all of this lovely stuff like Shoresearch. So Judith and Alicia asked me to come and speak about Shoresearch. I'm going to try there's a few slides at the beginning that some of you will have seen quite a few times now that have been involved with Shoresearch, but then I'm going to try and do a very basic analysis of what's gone on with Shoresearch this year in Devon. So that's up here on the north coast, what we've been doing at Wembury, and what the shores of South Devon have been doing as well. So hopefully some of this information will be new to you. But for those who haven't been on a Shoresearch survey so far, first of all, why not? Secondly, I'll just give you a brief introduction. So it's a national citizen science project. It was set up by the Wildlife Trusts about 20 years ago now. It's faded and come back. Some county wildlife trusts have been doing it for all of these years. In Devon, we've just really got going when it was relaunched after COVID. I have, as Judith said, I've been with DWT for 10 years at the MBA before that. So I think I've certainly known Paula's name my whole marine career, quite a while before I met you, Paula, finally. So I've known about coastwise, for a really long time. So that is, well done to everyone that's been involved in getting coastwise set up, keeping things going. And I hope, as I've said recently, that there's just going to be more and more marine stuff going on, more support from DWT. I was up here on Saturday running a marine strandings training course. So David now has some friends to help out, to go out and record seals and cetaceans and tuna that wash up on the beach. So that's really successful, fully booked course at Braunton. So it's great that we're mobilising local people in lots of different ways with the marine environment. But back to Shoresearch. So like I said, it's this citizen science project looking specifically at the intertidal area. So that's what lives basically between the high tide and the low tide. Now up here in North Devon, you've got such a fantastic variety of sites and beaches that might involve a sort of rocky shore survey, sort of rock pooling, identifying what you're finding. It might be more of a sandy shore. And the good thing about Shoresearch is that there are 4 different survey methods depending on who you've got coming or what your interest is, what your interest is as a group, what your interest might be as individuals. So we like to think there's something for everyone. So the one we're going to focus on today, because that's the one that most of us have been doing this year, is the walkover survey. And this is really an introduction to the range of species and habitats that we get along the coastline. So it's qualitative data rather than sort of in-depth quantitative data. It's really great for getting volunteer groups sort of upskilled and trained and just introducing people to what's out there on our shorelines. Rock pool safari basically with results where we're recording everything that we find. So I love doing it down at Wembury. Don't need much equipment at all. as we'll find out as we go through, the main thing is having a decent phone and a decent camera, which can be one and the same. So it's a survey within a given area. So at Wembury, we've got a massive sort of wave cut platform, a massive rocky shore. So when we do our walk-over surveys, we would just do it in one zone. Up here, depending on which sites you've been studying, doing your surveys on, you might be covering more than one zone. But as long as you're recording the four corners, getting those GPS coordinates in, then it doesn't matter. And as we learned on the ID course recently, even if you put measuring tapes down, you still need to control where people are going, make them aware that they need to stay. This is a particular coastwise thing. Don't have this trouble down south. People just seem to want to wander outside of the lines. But yeah, ideally inside the square, we're recording everything that we're finding. And you can use whatever buckets or visual markers, but maybe we'll try and get you guys some proper lines that say do not enter to keep everyone in, like herding cats. So yes, Paula, I feel your pain, having done the course a couple of weeks ago. The time species search is a really public friendly survey. It's really simple. Again, we'll focus on this a bit today because we've done some of these down south. And it's using species cards, which you can give out to whoever's in your group, whether it's trained volunteers or it's a family that have come along. You give them a species card like this, and they need to search for that species for 10 minutes, or ultimately, ideally give people 2 or 3 cards, and it's a 30-minute search for all 3 of them. And these cards would have on them either what we would call sort of native species, so things that we've always had here, but they might be disappearing, they might be changing their distribution. It might be species that are increasing with the warming water, they might be increasing their range. That's what we'd call sort of climate change indicators. Or it might be invasive non-native species. You're going to see this acronym a lot today, INNS. These are species that have come from other parts of the world by various means and are having a negative impact either on the environment, the biology, or a human impact, so in terms of recreation or the economy, if they're having a negative impact on things like aquaculture, oyster farms, mussel beds, all that sort of stuff. So really nice one to do with the public. We had a couple of those this season, which I'll come on to later, and a reminder with things that absence is as important as presence with surveying. Third one is for the real what I'd say sort of marine geeks amongst us that want to get down and identify everything that's within a certain quadrat on different parts of the shore. So this looks at species, abundance and habitat data. Ideally, you're trying to identify everything you're finding in that quadrat. So it does need quite a bit of experience, or certainly someone experienced with each quadrat. And again, decent camera and some more equipment. It still doesn't need a huge amount, a couple of quadrats. And that produces more robust data. So Cornwall Wildlife Trust have been using this method for quite a long time now. They're getting really great data, which they are able to contribute towards various marine conservation policies, working with groups like Natural England and the Environment Agency to get this Shoresearch methodology in their projects, which is great. But for us, we're sort of just starting out, focusing a bit more on the sort of fun and engagement side of things. Box core survey is very relevant to up here on the North Coast. Mark's been trialling this at Somerset a little bit. This is looking at the soft sediment, so what's living in the sand and mud, so more of the sort of estuarine spots, sandy places, maybe like Westward Ho, some of the other Minehead, other beaches. And that's a whole different kettle of fish in terms of what you're looking for. So my knowledge of what lives in the sand and the mud is, I would say, very poor. My knowledge of what lives on the rocky shore is slightly better. But yeah, it's a different survey, but really keen to sort of get trialing some of these and certainly increase my learning to box core surveys. So the all-important question is what happens with the data that you collect. Now, I spent a lot of time with Paula and Leisha and Pip and Nicola going through this, because it's really important. You're all volunteers. If you're giving up your time to record these things, you want to know where it's going. And so this is a nice flow chart that the Wildlife Trust have produced. So a lot of the resources have come from the Wildlife Trust, which is great. So we do get some resource from them, but then it is up to each Wildlife Trust to sort of get the project going. So we collect the data during a survey, either using the app, which you can see I'm using here on my phone, or paper recording forms. When we get back home, get back to the centre. So Debbie's been very kindly doing most of the data entry, I think. The data is uploaded either manually if it's recording sheets, or if it's on the app, you can do it there and then. So I sort of start when we're out on the shore, and then I'll finish things off later on when I get all the photos in from everyone. So it doesn't really matter how long it takes to get everything uploaded, as long as it is uploaded. The data then becomes part of the Wildlife Trust Shoresearch database. So this is a national portal that we're inputting this information to, and it's hosted on the Biological Records Centre data warehouse. So Wildlife Trust and other users of the portal, such as yourselves, can have access to view and download the data from this point, and that's what I'm going to be going on to in a little bit. And then the data is incorporated into iRecord's verification procedure. So you might have heard of iRecord and iNaturalist. They're two separate, similar sort of software programs where you can upload data. So I have iNaturalist on my phone, and I love just going along wherever I am and just taking a photo of something, uploading it, because I'm useless with terrestrial stuff. So I upload that, and it sort of suggests what it might be, and I think, yeah, let's give that a go. And then someone will come along and either say, yep, that's correct, or no, it might be this instead. And this is where we've got into a bit of a glitch, in that the records are still not being verified. There's a lot of Shoresearch records which haven't yet been verified, because the verifiers for iRecord, I think, are also volunteers. This is a global project, and it's just taking quite a bit of time. But we'll come back to that. So that's this next step. The data's verified, so it'd be verified by, for example, Debbie and co, when the records come into Coastlines, and then the data would go onto the portal, and hopefully I'll get to look at it at some point, and then it would get verified. So it does go through a few sort of verification programs. There's a couple of records I'll come on to in a bit, which I raised my sort of eyebrows very excitedly at. And then ultimately, best thing about it is that the records will be available. So they're going to go onto National Biodiversity Network, the NBN Atlas eventually, and to the local environmental records centres. Now that bit there, I'm not sure how that's working so far, because I haven't had much contact with our records centre, but this is how it's meant to be. This is how it will be. Whether we're all the way there yet or not is still TBC. We've just had a really lovely Shoresearch sort of promo video made with some funding from the Green Minds project, which was a sort of community engagement project in Plymouth that's trying to engage people with their local green and blue spaces. We were doing some Shoresearch surveys as part of that. I don't know if it's going to work for those of you online. I don't know if it's going to work for us here, because we're maximising all the tech here. But I'll just press play. If it doesn't work, we can watch it at the break time afterwards, and we can send a link to those online. But we'll see. You might be able to see it, not get any sound, because I'm not sure if the sound's working, and it may not work at all either. So. Okay. So there's no sound. Yeah, don't touch it. And those of you online see the film with the subtitles. What do you want to do? Carry on watching it, or should we try it in the break with sound? It's not. It's okay. Okay. It's just literally talking. So this is us doing a walkover survey. Try and get the bar out of the way of the. Pause that. I'm like, oh, you get back in there.
You're out of your line, yeah.
Shouldn't have messed with her, sorry. Okay, let's try again. Okay. There we go. So you'll meet Joe, who's came along to our first survey at Wembury last year, and he's been to every single survey since. So he's become a volunteer through Shoresearch, which is great, and then a couple of others as well who've been coming along. Quite interesting to watch it without the sound, because I can already see the subtitles moving too fast really to read, aren't they? Yeah. There's some at Braunton Countryside Centre, yes. So left one. I want to be an answer for the to take. It's all available on our website. Yes, when the really professional company made the film, and the clarity is excellent. This is Lauren, one of our recent graduates who's been volunteering at Wembury with our engagement stuff as well as Shoresearch. That's Matt, who some of you will have met in the surveys, our lovely assistant. So we'll just get it out as far and wide as possible. So just to sort of promote Shoresearch. And the other thing I was going to say that's reminded me of is I don't think we're advertising your coastwise Shoresearch surveys on the DWT website, which we should be doing. So for next year, let's get that sorted. Okay, so hopefully those of you online managed to see that. If not, we will share the link. So now to look at how we've got on this year. So this map, you can tell my IT skills aren't amazing, but I was quite proud of this. Map of Devon, stolen from Google, and it shows the survey locations that Shoresearch has taken part in this year. So coastwise up here, you've got your purple crabs. Wembury is in yellow, and then the shores of South Devon. So if you haven't heard of the shores of South Devon, they're quite a similar group, a volunteer group set up, much newer than coastwise. Basically a local interest group that's comprised of sort of volunteer, what I would call sort of naturalists, because amateur isn't the right word when someone's an absolute expert, like lots of you here. So they've been getting on board. Thanks to you guys coming on board with Shoresearch, we've got them on board now. So you can see the sort of effect that we're having. And you can see the coverage is pretty good. Hopefully in the next few years, all of these coastlines are going to be filled in with little crabs as much as possible. So I did very basic analysis of all of the survey data that went into the portal. So like I said, there's lots of caveats because none of the records I don't think have actually been verified, but we're going to, for the sake of today, we're going to assume that they are. And like I said, it's really simple. So coastwise have a login to the Shoresearch portal. I've got a login. Shores of South Devon have a login. So technically, any one leader from those groups could log into the portal and download the data. And that's what I did. I got a massive Excel spreadsheet that came up with all the data that everyone's collected. And so I did some very basic analysis on Microsoft Excel. I'm not a statistician by any means. I haven't done stuff like this since my undergrad dissertation. So it is very basic, but it highlights some of the main things, I think. So coastwise in purple, Wembury in yellow, shores of South Devon in green. You can see number of surveys we've completed this year, 6, 6 and 5, which is very good. we at Wembury have actually completed 8, but I haven't uploaded 2 lots of surveys from September yet, so I thought I can't include them. But we're doing very, very well, and I know you've got another survey coming up as well. Total number of records uploaded as well, I was surprised at how similar they are. So you guys win, 338 records, well done. Closely followed by us, 325 records, Shores of South Devon, 299. Again, you win with average species per survey, 23, versus our 17 and 18 for Shores of South Devon. We've done well on the number of participants. We've had 82 overall, so these are the number of people added up for each survey. So some of these people might be the same people, but it's the overall number in total who've taken part. So that's brilliant. And then, yeah, the average number of participants per survey. So you can see the Shores of South Devon actually have quite a small group of people. In fact, all of us do, really. To get this many records with this number of people is excellent. So we're all doing pretty well. So the way that the system works once you download the data is it puts it into sort of different categories. So this, you can't quite see the top of the slide here, sorry. This is the top 10 taxon groups across the site. So because not every record couldn't be identified to species level, it sort of filters them into taxon and then into taxon groups. So what this is showing is that across all of our surveys, we recorded the most alga, so different types of algae, basically. So we did lots of recording of those, followed by mollusks, crustaceans, and worms. So quite a lot of worms reported. So it's basically just the top 10 groups showing the variety of sort of groups of species that we recorded, which is really interesting. So when we break that down into each of our surveys, our top 10, the ones in green are the ones that we've got in common with each other. The ones in orange I'm going to come on to a little bit later. These are our climate change indicators, and the ones in red are our invasive non-native species. I'm surprised we didn't have any in our top 10, but again, we'll talk about at the end, but there can be quite a bit biased to a walkover survey for the one who's doing the photographs, because you know what you're looking for of the common things each time. So you go around and take photos of those, don't necessarily have time to photograph everything on a survey. So but really interesting, again, I think the similarity in what we've sort of recorded the most of. And by the way, I've shamelessly pinched a load of your photos from Facebook, Judith, Paula and Robert, so thank you in advance for doing that. I didn't have time to email you and ask you for photos, and I've done the same with Shores of South Devon, so I will replace with higher quality photos at some point. So how did you get on this year? You've carried out 5 surveys so far, soon to be 6. Coomsgate, is that how you pronounce it? Yeah, two surveys at Coomsgate, 2 surveys at Heel, 1 at Westwood Hoe. Recorded 14 different taxon groups overall. So those are the ones we just looked at, like algae, mollusk. I've mentioned the beginner species ID course that I ran at the start of October. So hopefully, do we know if that's resulted in any more members yet, or any more interest in the surveys?
We've definitely got people. Yes.
Brilliant, good. Yeah, short answer, yes. Excellent. So that was really good. That was thanks to Laura and the AONB for being able to fund me to come up and do that. So that was a lovely day. Okay, so this is the distribution of kingdom records. So some of this analysis is quite similar, but again, it's showing basically animals. Chromists are the brown algae. So when you start trying to classify seaweed, it gets really complicated, and that's going to be an underlying theme of today as well. So chromists are some of the brown algae, and then plantae is the green algae and some of the reds that are classified under the plant kingdom. But just like sort of mosses, lichen, fungi, it does get a bit confusing as to what's plant, what's an animal, and what's in between. But again, across your sites, you've got the same sort of thing. So you've recorded lots of different types of animals, and then the seaweeds, and then the brown seaweed sort of in third place. So similar sort of pattern. And you did 2 surveys at Kingsgate and Heel, whereas 1 at Westwood Ho. So that's why the bars look larger, because they weren't averaged out. So if we go to Kingsgate, this is what it looks like. Lots of algae recorded, crustaceans, mollusks, so similar to the overall picture. Chromists, Cnidarians, so Cnidarians is mostly comprised of the different anemones, and then we've got worms, sponges, a couple of fish. Oh, so chromis is the brown algae. Sorry, so that's the one. Yeah, it's yeah. As I was saying, it's confusing in that it's not a true plant, so it doesn't come into the plant kingdom. I didn't realise that chromis was actually its own kingdom. Apparently, it is. So what were the top 10 things recorded at Kingsgate? So this brown alga, I wouldn't even know what that was if I found that at Wembury, I don't think. So well done to whoever was recording that. So who was that? Put your hand up. Who was responsible for 3 records? Well done, Paula or Robin. Excellent work. It's not the most attractive brown alga, but well done anyway. That's good. Keel worms, yes. Is that the one that binds to the sand? No, not the sand bind. Okay. Keel worms, Patella vulgata, so really common species I'd expect. Snake locks anemone is what we'd consider a climate change indicator. Red algae species, so again, we'll come back onto that. Glaucus pimplet, so I think that's a Shoresearch favourite, definitely. So it's good to see that in your top 10, and a nice photo of them here. These are a type of anemone. Lovely photo from Laura there, and then strawberry anemone as well. So quite a few anemones in the top 10 at Kingsgate, which is great. Moving on to Heel Bay, similar sort of setup. Algae, mollusks, crustaceans. Again, it's sort of representative of what's there, but also I think what we're looking for, what we're looking at, what our own expertise is, and what you can do within the time. So it's quite easy to get photos of lots of different types of algae and then go back home later and identify it. Whereas potentially, trying to find 50 different sponges might be difficult. Nice ribbon worm down there as well. Excellent. So nice photo of a daisy anemone. So there's lots of different anemones up here, which is fab. Top 10 taxon. So furrowed crab, the Montague's crab. This is going to become a feature of the Shoresearch surveys. Other common species that we'd expect to find. 2 invasive species in the top 10 as well, the Darwin's marble and the pom-pom weed, which we shall come back to as well. So Westwood Ho, long list here because only 1 survey was done, so couldn't get an average of the top 10. But 53 taxa were recorded at Westwood Ho in that 1 survey. So very well done to everyone who went on that survey. That's a brilliant list to come out with. 2 particular highlights I've picked out are the beautiful honeycomb worm and the common starfish. So we don't get these at Wembury, so it's lovely to see these. So they prefer more sandy shores, the common starfish. This was a small one. I think it was about up to about 10 centimetres across. They can get much bigger out in sort of deeper water. And a great find was this squat lobster. Again, I haven't found that one before at Wembury. I had to look that one up for its common name. This was the one I got very excited about. And then I realised it was eggs, I think, cuttlefish eggs. Does that sound? Yes. So technically, I'm afraid that you can't record eggs. It has to be the living animal. But I thought I'd highlight that because that would have been an incredible record. But amazing that you found the eggs anyway. And again, the 2 invasive species as well. So well done for the Westwood Ho survey. So invasive species, this pom-pom weed, Coelacanthus okumiri, which Paula and I first started talking about, I think, a couple of years ago, was recorded on all 3 sites. So it's really of interest up here. Pip's been recording them in her invasive non-native species surveys as well. So quite surprising, I suppose, that it's been recorded across all sites, and it seems to be really increasing in its sort of abundance and coverage as well. So definitely that's one to pick out.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, okay. So on the south coast, Wembury, we've done 8 walkover surveys, 6 have been uploaded. So the big reef at Wembury is called Blackstone Reef. Combined with some of those surveys, we did time species searches, and then we did 2 public time species searches where we advertised the sort of one of our classic rock pool safaris, and then on the end with a Shoresearch survey. Surprisingly, less people booked onto those than just the normal rock pool safaris. So you give people more for their money and they don't want it, because I think the word survey was in it. But those who did come along really enjoyed it. And so it's really nice to introduce families, children, adults to Shoresearch who might not otherwise have taken part. So that was really good. Just over 100 species in total, 82 participants. And we also ran a sort of training course, introductory course for some apprentices that were part of the Green Minds project. So these are young people trying to get into the careers sector. I didn't go through all the data analysis like I did with the coastlines data. I've just picked out some highlights. I don't want to bore you all with loads of bar graphs. I'm going to show some nice photos now of some of the highlights for me and for us is this beautiful bushy rainbow wrack, a native species that's becoming rarer, sort of cold water species. I've got some really stunning photos of it, but this actually shows it here in both its sort of colour morphs, I suppose. It's only when the light shines on it you get this beautiful iridescent greens, blues and purples, and then when you're actually under the water, if you're snorkeling, it looks very brown. But that's a lovely record to find. Actually, I don't think it is a cold water species. I'm sure that used to be on the shore thing, climate change indicator species. Double check that. One of the most beautiful photos from our Shoresearch survey was taken by Joe, which I think is siphoned featherweed. Red filamentous bushy red seaweeds are really, really difficult to identify. So I'm pretty sure this was our best guess. As the records haven't been verified yet, I can't say for definite. But yeah, a lovely, lovely little photo of that one. We had some really good low tides in September and at the start of the year, February, these were taken actually, where you get the amazing spring tides around the equinoxes. So we got really far out for those, and that also obviously affects what you find on a walkover survey. So when we're thinking about this data, it would probably be useful actually next time I do this talk to put an aerial photo of exactly where on the shore the survey took place, because this is really quite far out. And it was the first time I'd ever seen elephants hide sponge. Has anyone ever sort of seen that before? Yeah. You've seen it, Jan?
Yeah.
Tunnels. Oh, brilliant. Yeah. Amazing. So yeah, Keith Hiscock introduced me to elephants hide sponge. This was a fantastic crevice. Turned out to be a little cork wing wrasse down here and a top knot, a flatfish in there as well. But what I love about Shoresearch is that I can spend time looking for things like this, whereas normally my day job is showing children crabs and starfish, but actually I've been learning so much. Look at all this life that we've got here. There could probably be about 30 different species here, and still I can only name a handful of them. So, and I just love the common name elephant hide sponge. That's just fab. Looks like what it is. Another one of my favourite. I've just started loving sponges. The simplest life form on the planet, but they can be absolutely stunning. This is called boring sponge. It's bright yellow. You can't miss it when it's on the rocks, and it's got these really big paws. So that was a lovely spot as well. And we found our first sea cucumber rock pooling. So this is a cotton spinner, not the most attractive animal when it's out of the water. They're lovely to find on our snorkel safaris. We found a few. But yeah, a first Shoresearch record for us of the cotton spinner, which was brilliant. So some real lovely highlights there. Some potential lowlights, I suppose. If we're looking at invasive species now, so if you hadn't picked it up, anything in red is an invasive species. We're starting to find lots of juvenile Pacific oysters. When I first came across these, I actually emailed Matt and Mark from Cornwall and Somerset, thinking they might be a different species. but turns out they're juvenile Pacific oysters, and they're really sort of colourful at this stage. You can't see it in the picture here, but again, they've got these sort of purpley tinges to the shell. And Wembury is right next to the Yale Estuary. The Yale Estuary is absolutely riddled with large Pacific oysters, but we hadn't got that many at Wembury. So again, a great reason for doing Shoresearch is to keep an eye on that, to monitor it, potentially do something about it. What I found on the last few surveys this year is these are getting more common. So this is going to become an issue for us at Wembury that we need to think about what we're going to do. Potentially, but it's difficult that in a conservation area, in a public facing place. On a Shoresearch survey where I'm trying to promote conservation and then I'm just sort of hammering, you know, oysters off the rocks with my backhand. But yeah, potentially they need removing. We don't own the land either, so it gets very complicated. First time I've ever found one of these at Wembury. Another really attractive animal is the leathery sea squirt. This is another invasive species. It doesn't mean they haven't been at Wembury. Like I said, I haven't had the chance to go looking for them. But still, you know, it's an exciting find. It's a first Shoresearch record. It's the first time we've put that information somewhere. So someone like Keith would have probably found them before, but really great for us to be able to do it. Massively on the increase is this invasive algae called devil's tongueweed. Keep a look out for this up here. It's very, very, as the name suggests, it's very swirly. When you touch it, it's got this slimy feel to it, but when you take your hands out of the water, the slime doesn't transfer onto your hands. But just anecdotally, I've noticed how much this has increased in the last few years. So I'd say if pom-pom weed is your invasive up here, this is ours down on the south coast, this Gratilepia. And another first for us this year is the red ripple bryozoan. So this is an invasive bryozoan. It's suddenly started springing up all over the rocks. So Shoresearch is really helping us to get these records recorded and for us to start sort of paying attention to them. Okay, climate change indicators. Furrowed crabs were recorded on all of our surveys. So this Montague's crab, this is the other species that I would say have most noticed the increase in recent years. So with warming water, we expect the furrowed crab to increase, and they seem to have a competitive advantage over the shore crabs as well. So I would say they're now probably the most common crab that we find at Wembury, which is, you know, it was unheard of 10 years ago, but we don't have enough data as to what the impacts of that might be, but other people hopefully are studying that. One of the species that definitely is being studied at Wembury is the St. Piran's hermit crab, or the Mediterranean hermit crab. This is one of the species that we'd look for on the time species search, which I incorrectly actually first put down as a climate change indicator, but it is in fact a changing distribution species. So technically it's a native species that we've always had, but its distribution is changing likely as a result of warming waters. So it's increasing. So it does get very confusing. But basically, they used to be around, disappeared in the 80s for various reasons. Could have been that no one was looking for them, could have been just population changes. There were possible suggestions it was linked to the Torrey Canyon oil spill. That's now been sort of debunked. But first appeared in Cornwall about 10 years ago, closely followed by us at Wembury. We found a small number in one rock pool in Wembury, and then now you find them in these huge clusters, and they're really spreading out. So this picture here, these are all St. Piran's hermit crabs from one rock pool. You move on to the next rock pool, there's loads of them there. So they seem to do really well at colonising one little area, and then they move on and go and find another one. So this is ones that got on the south coast, not up here yet. So moving on to the shores of South Devon, as I said, local sort of volunteer interest group with various experts. They did 6 surveys in 6 locations, so I think they get top marks for their geographic coverage. A really good effort and a small number of volunteers on each survey. But between them, 299 records, 109 species, and 31 participants in total. So you might have met Toby Sherwin before, Mike Poulston, who's a local expert. He's definitely worth asking for a talk on barnacles, if there's interest for that, or anything else. He knows everything. You've had him already, brilliant. So I didn't have time to ask them for their highlights, so I've just selected some of the records that I happen to have decent photos of or could pitch them from Facebook. This is Sue Watson-Bailey, who's one of the sort of founders of the group. It takes a lot of the photos. So this was from Corryton Cove in Dawlish. So nice spread of just sort of generalist species. So we've got this seamat here, this bryozoan, beautiful painted top shells, spotted cowries or European cowries. So we get the 2 species of cowrie on the south coast, and grey sea slug. And there's a couple of very similar looking species here, so I'm not sure exactly which one that is. Moving on to Corbin Head, so more Torquay Way. Again, so they recorded pepperdulls very common on the south coast. String of sausages with, this is one of my favourite seaweeds because they're just absolutely gorgeous. If you look at them, little sausages put together. Some people call them bunny ears as well, but I think there's another red algae that's called bunny ears with common names, so it just gets so confusing. And worm pipefish. So these are really common on the south coast, these small pipefish that you find intertidally on the rocky shoal. There's Toby in his favourite place. And then moving on to the invasive non-natives that they recorded, really quite characteristic of the areas that they're surveying. So obviously Torquay, you can see here this massive cruise liner in the background. Torquay is close to marinas, it's ports, that's where you can get real hives of invasive non-native species spreading. And this one here in particular is called Bokami, or Japanese kelp. And that was a surprising record for me that they found that. It's common in Plymouth, in the marinas. We haven't had it at Wembury, but it's obviously common in the sort of Torquay area. So that's an interesting one to sort of keep an eye on. And then this codium, again, this is really taken off on the south coast. Native and non-native look very similar. But because of the drastic increase that we're finding, we have to assume that it's the invasive one, but it's best for sort of experts to tell the difference. You can use a microscope, look for the little hooks on the end to look at those. So it's quite reflective of the area. So overall similarities, if we're thinking about all of our 3 groups, all of our surveys, the native species, so honeycomb worm was recorded up here, it's recorded by the shores of South Devon. They're surveying more sandy areas. Obviously, we don't have it at Wembury, it's a real rocky shore. But it's really nice to see that it's been recorded on both coasts. Loads of sea hares this year, and pictures of the eggs as well. So we found lots and lots of sea hare eggs. I'm sure someone's uploaded a coastwise photo of sea hare eggs as well. So it was a good year for certain sea slugs, nudibranchs. So generic species we have in common, which is great. The climate change indicators, again, all of these in common are Montague's furrowed crab, bladder wrack, volcano barnacle, snake ox anemone, strawberry anemone. So those were recorded on all of our sites across all 3 areas. And then invasive species as well. So all of us recorded pom-pom weed. Coelacanthus was recorded on all sites. Wireweed as well, this Sargassum muticum, which is a much bigger issue for us at Wembury than the pom-pom weed. You can see here, it springs up in sort of very early spring before the other seaweeds bloom, and it can completely cover the rock pools. So this can alter the temperature underneath, it can shade the species underneath, so it can have various impacts, but it's also a habitat for lots of other things. So invasive species are categorised because they are thought, or there's evidence to show of a negative impact, but they can have positive impacts as well, which is why it's really difficult in terms of the management of them as well. And the Darwin's barnacle, Ostraminius, was recorded across those. So I think we can conclude that the south coast has got more invasive non-native species, and that's to be expected because it's busier. There's more harbours and ports, there's more shipping activity, more opportunity for these species to spread. Harpoonweed is another one that's really gone mad down on the south coast, our devil's tongueweed, Pacific oyster. So more of those on the south coast, but all the more reason to keep an eye out for them up here on the north coast as well, because I'm sure they'll be around at some point. So conclusions from this year's surveys, and as I caveated, it was very basic analysis. I didn't have a huge amount of time, but the basic conclusion, I think we all need help identifying red algae, because there were lots of records that were rhodophyta. They're really difficult to identify. I definitely need some help. That's something that I think we can ask TWT for. We've already mentioned species ID training, so if there would be someone to run a specific algae online course, I think we'd all be really interested, hopefully. Invasive non-natives and climate change indicators are common on both coastlines. Obviously, we have some differences. There's some things we're not seeing up here that we are seeing on the south coast, but I think overall they're both on the increase, and that's why it's really important to keep an eye out. And also new species to look out for. I don't think we're going to find a bluefin tuna on in any of our rock pools, but it's certainly in terms of the marine strandings work we're doing, species like this are going to become more common as a result of how the temperature of the oceans are changing, and we will expect to see more things. So triggerfish, for example, we've had those recorded. They've been around for quite a while, but they're really increasing. So keeping an eye out for things like that. And obviously this analysis is based on a very small number of surveys, small number of data sets that haven't yet been verified. So we need to keep going to record the trends, to analyse the trends. Still got to sort out these glitches in the portal. We need to get these records verified. The Wildlife Trust are on it. It's beyond sort of our control, but it's in the process, hopefully. But most importantly, look how much we've achieved in 2023 in Devon. We have done 19 surveys in total, 163 people engaged with our local marine environment, 200 different species recorded, and 962 records have gone into that Shoresearch data portal for Devon. So very well done. So moving on to next year, what do we think? What do we think we should do? Do we think we should try more survey locations? Should we try more methodologies? Box core, quadrat, I'm quite keen to give those a go. The trouble is, as you know, there's only a handful of decent tides. What do you do with that time and those tides? Trial the Shoresearch app more. I know, Debbie, I've been raving about the Shoresearch app because I love it, but it's not for everyone. But if you can get hold of it and understand it, it should make life a lot easier and save time. So it might be worth trialing that a bit more. National Shoresearch Week. So we sort of floated the idea this week. We had a Southwest Shoresearch Week this year, which you took part in, which was end of September, early October. We're keen, along with Matt at Cornwall, to make it a sort of national one. We could do a competition, see who can find the most species in a certain week or survey, something like that. And potentially a conference, hopefully, at some point. So now that we're actually getting some data and we're getting some information back that we can use. So it's your project. I think you've done amazing. Well done. And sort of over to you for what you want to do. Thanks for having me. I've finished on this one. I think it's Robert's photo.
Yeah.
I've got no idea what this is, so that's going to be over to questions. I can only guess. Oh, I don't even want to guess. I was going to say a bivalve that's been really encrusted, like a scallop or something, but bristled limpet. That gets photo of the year for me, I think. So well done. Horse muscle.
Well, those swords, what the things, the little spikes coming out,
Yeah.
one of them is smooth and one of them is serrated. That's the difference between the two different species. There's lots of them I've found in deep bay mostly.
And they're what? They're horse muscles.
They're just mussels. I don't
Oh,
think
just
they're horse
mussels.
mussels.
Okay.
Mussels. Hairy
I
mussels.
was close. Bivalve. Hairy mussels.
I
Love it.
never listed.
Yeah.
Got its size.
There's quite a few of these there.
Okay.
Oh, well, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, Carol.